welcome. My name is Jenna, and if you're interested in beginner embroidery, then I'm glad we found each other. Today, I'm going to talk about my solution for transferring embroidery patterns onto thick fabric without a printer. If that sounds helpful, stick around. Okay, this is a problem I came up against with my first embroidery project, which is this canvas bag for my sister-in-law. As you can see, I am stitching on the straps of the bag, which is double thick. So I couldn't do the classic put a pattern underneath the fabric and then trace over it. And even with a lit background, you couldn't see it well enough to trace. So the solution I came up with was a stencil. But before I came up to that solution, I tried these chalk sheets by DMC. The problem with them, so the idea behind them is there's paper with chalk on it. Put the paper face down with the chalk, have a pencil, draw the design on the back, and then the chalk transfers to your fabric. The problems with that were the chalk didn't come out detailed enough for what I needed, and it transferred, so there's some yellowing that stuck even after I tried to wash it, so that is a bummer. I went online to look for a solution, and the only options I saw were a projector, which I tried to do a DIY one and it did not work, or using a water-soluble transfer sheet with either the design pre-printed by a company or that you print with your printer. Well, I wanted to use the designs that I had picked, and my printer at home doesn't work very well, so neither of those solutions worked for me. That's where I came up with the stencil, and I'm going to show you how. What you'll need for your stencil is an envelope, a pencil or pen to trace your design, a heat or water-soluble pen so that you can trace your design onto the fabric and then have it wash away, some pairs of scissors for larger and detail work, and then a pattern. I'm going to be using an iPad. Okay, so step one is to just take your envelope and cut a chunk of the envelope that is about the size of the design that you want to stencil. There we go. Then you're going to take your design. If you're using an iPad, you're going to want to switch it into guided access mode. That allows you to touch the screen without it moving in the areas that are highlighted, and then the other areas you can move it. In order to trace it, I need to up the brightness. As you can see, it doesn't shine through very good here. So I'm going to do that off screen and come back when it's traced. Okay, I've traced my pattern, and now it's time for us to start cutting it out. My first step is just going to be to cut off the bottom so that the bottom of the paper is where the bottom of the pattern starts. Now I'm going to use my smaller scissors to cut along these lines so that we can get some really detailed line work as opposed to just cutting around the outside. As you can see, I'll be able to lift up now and trace those thin lines. There's also areas like here where I don't need the thin lines, so I'm just going to cut out the whole thing. I think it's especially helpful for details like in these flowers. Let me show you how I do that. For these two petals, those are just going to be daisy loops, so I'm not as concerned, but I want to make sure I get these details inside correct. So I'm going to cut up around the daisy stitches. I'll cut down to show where that daisy line is. Up here. And I'm both going to cut up so I can draw that straight line and also cut in. So that will allow me to trace those detailed lines while still keeping the hole. I'm going to do the same thing up here. I did a little bit on the leaf. So again, this will show me where that line is without losing the whole flower. I'm going to do the other one off camera and circle back when I'm done. Okay, there we go. I now have a pattern that has flexible edges so I can get those fine lines I want. What I would do next is, just as an example, lay it on the thick fabric and then use my pen to trace through the lines, lifting where I need to get all that detail work. When I'm done, I'll stitch it. Like on this side, you see some of the blue residue underneath some of these stitches. And it will just, here you can see some of the partial, this is another partial one where it's been traced, but I'm still working on it. And when it's done, it'll rinse off just like that, where you can't see the blue at all. Because I wanted to make a few stencils and I'm using them over and over with the pen, I got some plastic stencil sheets. I think it was maybe like 12 for $10 Amazon. And I made plastic versions of the stencils. So the same idea where they can bend on the fine lines, but they're a little bit sturdier. That being said, I don't think you have to go with the plastic. I think that if you're only transferring 1 or 2 designs, the paper works just fine. So I hope this was helpful and gives you some ideas for your own project. And if it was, subscribe. Thanks. That's where I came up with the stencil, and I'm going to show you how.